I am flying to Sydney literally tomorrow. Issachar Aran tweed in confetti. All my other whips kind of fell by the wayside. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Josie Violet and this is Josie Violet Knits. This is a channel where I talk all about my knitting journey. I started knitting in the beginning of January this year, 2025, and I have been doing a lot of knitting in that time. And so because I kind of properly started in January, this is my first transitioning into autumn period time frame as a knitter, and the excitement is definitely real. I have so many plans, so many things I am planning to knit. I've been casting on quite a lot of things, so we're going to go through all of that in today's podcast episode. I'm going to start off with what I'm wearing, which is the waffle loop sweater dress by Other Loops. Now, I have done 2 other videos about this, so if you want to see all the information about the sweater in a lot more detail, go check those out. But I kind of wanted to just cover it in this podcast episode anyway, because it took me 2 months to make, and I'm very, very proud of myself for doing a cable sweater. When I first started knitting in January, I would never have thought that by this point I would be knitting a full-on cable sweater. So I was so happy that I managed to achieve it. There were quite a lot of ups and downs with this sweater. First of all, I didn't want a dress, but for some reason I thought I could just knit a dress pattern and it would all be fine. But it turns out I'm actually not so tall that it wasn't a dress, and it ended up being way too long. I had to cut into the bind off and frog it back about a third of what I'd already knit, and then re-knit the ribbing and then bind it off. So I go into that in a lot more detail in my previous video, so I'll put the info for that up on the screen here if you're interested. I think it's been about 2 weeks since I finally completed this sweater, and I have been wearing it non-stop. I basically have hardly taken it off my body. There was a period where it started to get a little bit colder here, and I was so excited that I could finally wear this more regularly. Then it got hotter again, and I was just in denial that I just kept wearing it even though I was like sweating and overheating. And to be honest, right now it's quite warm today and it's probably a bit too hot to be wearing the sweater, but I still want to wear it because it's my favourite sweater that I've ever knit, and I feel so cozy in it, and I just never want to take it off. I feel like the pattern is, once you get your head around what's happening, the pattern is quite easy to understand. You start off doing the back, and then you do increases into kind of a trapezoid shape, and then you pick up for the shoulders and then knit down, and then eventually you join in the round once you've done more increases. And you're doing a waffle pattern most of the time then, and then it kind of transitions into this cable design at the front and at the back, and it's the same cable design at the front and the back, and then it's waffle stitch elsewhere. There's also a nice little bit of ribbing on the side, which I enjoy. It's just like a little detail like that most people probably wouldn't even notice because it's like under your arm, but I notice it. There's also this really nice ribbing design where you pick up for the sleeves. It kind of goes in a rib down your arm and then either side of your arm. So there's just lots of little details like this in this design, which I really, really love. The yarn I used for this was Issachar Alpaca 2 and Issachar Marilyn, and I used 6mm needles, so this was pretty chunky. I feel like this knitted up relatively quickly. It took me about 2 months, but I was knitting some other things in between, and I did have a few mistakes happen along the way. So I feel like 2 months for a cable sweater is really not too bad. Other Loops does also have a regular waffle loop sweater, which has a slightly different neckline, and it is a finer gauge, so I guess that would take longer to knit. But the benefit of that pattern is it is just a normal sweater length. Basically, if you're planning on knitting this pattern, the sweater dress pattern, but you don't want it to be a dress length, I would say definitely give it a mid-project block. I think that was the whole problem, is I wanted to hold off for the big blocking reveal, and because of that I didn't realise how big it was going to grow, because waffle stitch does grow a lot in blocking, and so do cables relax quite a lot. So all of those things combined meant that I basically grew the jumper almost, probably not double, but at least by a third, and it was already quite big and it just became huge. And I knew it was a dress pattern and I wanted it to be quite long, but I didn't want it to be almost halfway down my legs. I wanted it to be something that I could still wear with trousers, and it ended up just being a bit too long. So that's just something to bear in mind. Obviously, if you do want a proper sweater dress, then it's probably a good one. For reference, I am 5'9.5", so I'm relatively tall, which I think is part of the reason why I thought I would be okay with this length, but it was just so long. Anyway, you can go watch my previous videos if you want to know more detail about this sweater. We'll see how long I can keep it on for this video because I'm already starting to sweat, but I feel like I just want to keep it on because it's so cozy. Okay, so let's get on to my whips. I have quite a lot of exciting things going on at the moment. I think in the previous episode, I had my plans for the Upstream sweater by Rosie Knitwear, the Super Basic Tee by O Water Knit, and the Seashore skirt. I have since added 2 extra projects to that list, and I haven't even cast on the Upstream sweater or the Super Basic Tee yet, but I have cast on one of those, and then I've got 2 additional patterns that I have cast on and I'm very excited to tell you about. So to start off, let's talk about the Seashore skirt. This is a pattern by Kika, and I love this pattern. I'm knitting it in Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the colour Copper, which is such a lovely shade of, it's kind of a orangey brown, and it just makes me think of autumn so much. This is how far I am with this, so I haven't really gotten too far, to be honest. I am flying to Sydney literally tomorrow, and my plan is to take this on my flight and see how much I can knit. I'm going from the UK to Sydney, which is a 24-hour flight, so my plan is to just take this on my carry-on and see how far I can get in my 24-hour flight, because I have now gotten to the point where I can do, this is a 4-row repeat, and I've pretty much gotten to the point where I can do it without having to look at the pattern, which makes it feel so much faster and so much easier. I just have one of these little, I probably need to take some of these off actually, but I just have one of these little row counters on here, and so I just count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I just start again, and then I just know where I am on the chart. And it took a little while to memorize the pattern. It is 18 stitches across, repeated all the way around, but because it's only 4 things, and there's kind of a logic to how they progress. If you watch the video tutorial for this, you'll kind of understand what I mean, but they kind of, each one just changes slightly. So that makes it a little bit easier to understand. At first I was thinking, how could I memorize 18 stitches times 4? But there is a sort of weird logic to it that kind of makes sense once you've done like quite a few repeats of this pattern. Lots of people, thank you for your advice, because I was, on my last video, I was slightly scared, to be honest, because as I said at the beginning, I only started knitting in January. I still kind of consider myself a beginner, probably quite an adventurous beginner at this point, but I had never done lace before, so thank you for all your advice. One big thing that a lot of people said was just make sure that you put stitch markers around each repeat of the pattern, and that has really helped. I am able to easily see where I am, and I'm not accidentally knitting into the wrong repeat or anything like that. So I haven't had any issues with anything like that now that I've got all these stitch markers on. I did have one quite annoying problem, which is the classic problem that I feel like everyone has to experience at some point, and I'd never experienced it before, and that was I ended up twisting the whole thing in the round. So this whole thing is just knit in the round from the beginning, and it's very difficult to make sure that your stitches aren't twisted when you join in the round, and I thought I had managed to do it. I had checked it a lot of times, but it is really hard to kind of double check for sure that you get it, that you've gotten it right, and I had just twisted it. There's nothing you can do once you've gotten that far along and you realise you've essentially knitted, I think it's called a Mobius strip, where it's like just twisted. Once you have, like, there's literally nothing you can do about that, so I just had to unravel it and start again, and I was quite annoyed with myself. I looked up some tips of how to solve this issue, and so what I ended up doing was I actually knitted one row not in the round before I joined in the round, and I'm sure I can kind of hide that once I pick up for the waistband of the skirt. I'm not worried that that will show up in any way because you have to pick up for the waistband anyway, so that will kind of hide that extra row that I've added on the top. And that just really helped because it just means that when you join in the round, it's a lot thicker and more easily visible when you actually join in the round. So the second time that I attempted it, I didn't have any issues, and I have now created a non-twisted skirt, so that's good because that would be very annoying. And I was looking on Reddit and I saw some people say that it happened to them, like not for this particular pattern but just for other patterns, it happened to them like 3 or 4 times, and I think I would probably give up at that point if that happened to me because it was very frustrating, especially with this lace pattern. You know, you put quite a lot of time and energy into it and then you just realise that you're gonna have to rip the whole thing out and start again. It was quite devastating, but I'm glad that I pushed through and now it is all good, and I'm just basically knitting this for a very long time. I am doing the long version of this skirt, so this is going to take me quite a while, and it's kind of nice to just have something that's repetitive but it's a bit more interesting than stockinette, and it really is quite satisfying. You can see the pattern appearing. I feel like at the beginning I probably wasn't doing it as neat as I could have been doing, just because, well, it was my first time ever doing this. So it's definitely not perfect, but just the fact that you can even see this cool pattern appearing is really satisfying to me, and I'm so excited to keep going on it. The yarn is actually way nicer to knit with than I thought it would be. I thought it would be quite hard on your hands, kind of like cotton, but I think there's something about the silk that it's not stretchy. It definitely isn't ASMR. It definitely isn't stretchy, but it is kind of soft on your hands. I guess it is silk, so it doesn't feel rough on my hands when I'm knitting it, and I can knit on this for quite a long time without feeling that you sometimes get with cotton and other plant fibres. And yeah, I'm just really enjoying it. I'm holding it double. It is looking a bit more orange on camera than it is in real life. It is a little bit more brown. I feel like on camera it's looking quite saturated, but it's a little bit more subdued in real life. I'm not usually super into lace and really super girly romantic styles, so I'm still not 100% sure why this pattern just like spoke to me so much, but I think I can just imagine myself wearing it with, you know, like a boxy t-shirt or like a denim jacket or something, denim shirt. I think there's just so many ways that you could style this, keeping the rest of the outfit quite simple and just having this skirt as like a little interesting pop. Also, Kika in her photos styled it with her Birkenstock Bostons, which I just wear absolutely non-stop. I love my Bostons. I literally live in them. And when I saw her wearing the skirt with the Bostons, I was like, this is the skirt for me. So I'm very excited to eventually be wearing this skirt with my Bostons, and I'll be seeing how much of this I can knit on my flight to Sydney. Hopefully they will let me take my knitting needles through airport security. I'm going through Heathrow, so I think it should be okay. I've not tried taking knitting needles through Heathrow before. I have managed to get them through Gatwick, but we'll just see. I'm gonna take them, I'm not going to have them on my project, I'm going to have them separately, and I've heard some people say if you put them in a pencil case then it's more likely to get through because it kind of just looks like your other pencils. So I think I'm going to try that, and yeah, I'm very excited about this one. The next whip I have, this was kind of a spontaneous decision. So this is the Rosie sweater by Knit, and here is what I've done on this so far. You can start to see the rose pattern appearing. I have just been working on this for 1 week and I kind of just became obsessed with it, and all my other whips kind of fell by the wayside. I'm sure you've seen this pattern. There was a lot of people liking it on Instagram when it came out. So this is a drop shoulder sweater, but it also has raglan, so it's very interesting construction. It kind of in a similar way to the waffle loop sweater. You start knitting flat in the back and then you work German short rows to shape the back, and then you have increases and then you pick up on the shoulders and knit down, and then you keep knitting flat, and this is all in just without the colour work to start off with, and then you kind of do this interesting picking up for the shoulder. It's kind of hard to explain. I'm sure the description of this pattern explains it better than I am, but it makes this really interesting shoulder cap here, which is essentially a drop shoulder. On me, it kind of falls just past the edge of my shoulder, so it's not too much of a drop on me. I think for some people it would be, I mean, depending on which size you choose, and I have quite big shoulders, so for me it's kind of hitting here, so it's just slightly a drop shoulder. And then it has raglan increases once you get past the shoulder. I don't know how much you can see on camera because it is a darker colour, but we have raglan increases here. And then the raglan increases continue into the rose pattern. So I have previously knit one colourwork sweater before, the Haze sweater by the Knit Pearl Girl, which I loved doing. That was a circular yoke, and I don't know, as I said, I have quite big shoulders. I feel like a circular yoke isn't necessarily the best construction for me because I have quite big shoulders, and my back is a little bit I have a few back issues, so I always have issues with fitting things around my back in particular. So for me, drop shoulders always tend to be a lot better for just my general shape. So I was very excited when I saw that this sweater was a drop shoulder construction, because it's quite rare to find a drop shoulder colourwork pattern. They definitely do exist, but they're not as common as a circular yoke. Seems like the circular yoke is like the standard construction for knitting colourwork, because obviously it's just easier. You're knitting in a circle in the round straight away, and it is a bit easier. But the way this is designed means that you can have kind of the best of both worlds. You are getting the raglan increases, which continue to shape it once you get past the drop shoulder section. You're able to knit in the round the whole time when you're doing the colour work, so it's very, very smart, and I am enjoying it a lot. So this is the yarn that I'm using for this. This is Tin Pigint held together with Tin Silk Mohair, both by Sadness Garn, and I will put the shade colours on the screen. I'm doing the reverse colour order to the original. So the original is the bulk of the sweater is white with the roses being brown, and on mine I have gone with the bulk of the sweater being brown and the roses being white. But I have a little bit of an added interest with this Tin Silk Mohair by Sadness Garn. This is the print, I think it's a new shade range that they have, and it is double the size of the regular Tin Silk Mohair balls, and I have wound it up. I got a little yarn winder and swift for my birthday, so I very satisfyingly have rolled this up, and this is the print colourway in Blossom, and I just thought that was the perfect shade for this pattern. It is pretty much just reminds me of Blossom, so it has pink, it has yellow, brown and white all within it, and it just adds a little bit of extra interest to the flowers that I've been knitting, and I have just been obsessed just watching how all of these different ones have been knitting up, because at first I wasn't sure if it would actually show up that much, because obviously it's still quite a pale, like all the shades are quite pale, so I didn't know how much it would actually show up, and it is definitely subtle, but it is noticeable, and the more that I knit, the more I'm able to see these different colours coming through. I hope it shows up on camera. And then sometimes the mohair goes a bit brown, so I don't know if that actually looks good or if it just looks a bit confusing because it's almost like blending in a bit too much with the rest of the brown. But it's definitely interesting, and it's adding quite a lot of variety to the roses, and especially when there's like a super pink one, I'm just like, oh, it just looks so fun. I would definitely recommend this colourway if you're just looking for a little bit of extra something to add to your colour work. And yeah, it is so fun. I am quite close to getting to the point where I'm going to be splitting for sleeves, and then the pattern will continue slightly on. Then there'll be like a little break of just brown, and then there's another repeat of the rose pattern, which then also continues. So it continues twice on the sleeves as well. So it kind of mirrors that on the sleeve. And I just love this pattern. I am honestly having so much fun. I have taught myself to knit with two hands. So I normally knit English style flicking. And so I think that made it a bit easier for me to add on continental onto my left hand. So I've been able to knit with two hands as I've been doing this. And I think that just makes it so much easier, because I feel like obviously I'm having to look down at the pattern to make sure that I'm counting the right number of stitches. So that is slowing it down slightly. But apart from that, I am able to catch my floats quite quickly, especially if it is a brown float I'm catching, not a white one. I feel like one way, catching one colour is easier than catching the other colour. And luckily that colour is the colour that I have to catch more often, if that makes any sense. So I feel like I'm able to knit this relatively quickly, definitely not as quick as my normal stockinette, because I'm having to pause and look at the pattern just to make sure I'm knitting the right order of stitches. But I feel like I'm getting through it so quickly because I'm just so addicted to it, and it's so fun seeing the pattern progress. It's kind of like stripes, where you just want to get to the next section because you're just seeing it appear, and it's just so satisfying. I find it so much more satisfying than knitting stockinette, where you kind of don't get a sense of your progress, but with something like this you can see so clearly in front of you your progress. I would say that the tin silk mohair is very fluffy. When I started knitting with this, it's almost hairy, I would say. I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but it is a very hairy mohair, and I am slightly concerned that I'm going to be finding it a bit itchy. I'm not sensitive to mohair usually, like my skin for some reason doesn't mind like itchy wool or mohair, but this is very, very hairy, and I've been noticing as I've been working on it that I've been getting a blocked nose, and I do have allergies quite a lot anyway, but I feel like maybe I'm slightly allergic to this mohair, just in terms of like it's the mohair is like blocking my nose and making me sneeze more. So that's just something to bear in mind if you haven't used this mohair before and you're considering it. Like, some of the hairs on it are so long. I've also never knit with brown before, and when I first started using it, it was quite weird because I felt weirdly like I was knitting with my own hair, which was a weird experience. Also, my dog is brown, so I was like, I feel like I'm knitting with my dog's hair. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that when they're knitting with something that's the same colour of their own hair. Anyway, I think I've gotten over that now, now that I'm knitting with the white and the brown. I feel slightly less like I'm knitting with my own hair. So yeah, that is the Rosie sweater. I think once I have gotten past the first rose section, I'll probably add the neckband, because I love adding a neckband early on. It helps me kind of see what it's going to look like and get a better idea for the final fit. I also think I want to do a mid-project block with this, because I've learnt my lesson from the waffle loop sweater dress. I don't want to have to reknit this, and I don't want to have to frog it because it is mohair and that is not fun. So I'm going to do a mid-project block, and I feel like the colour work will kind of relax out and it will give me a better view of what I'm doing. Also, just to mention, as it suggests in the pattern, I'm knitting the main brown bit in 4mm, and then I have increased to 4.5mm for the colour work, and I feel like that's working out quite well. I can't see too much bunching, maybe a slight amount. It's kind of hard to tell until you get it off the needle, but I think it has stopped too much of the bunching going on, and as I'm knitting I'm kind of pulling it as I go to make sure that there's enough sort of slack in the stitches. But yeah, I think for me, adding just that extra 0.5mm when I'm doing the colour work has been helping with any tightness issues. The regular pattern has quite a high collar, and that did actually give me a bit of pause of knitting this pattern when it first came out, because I was thinking, I don't know if I am a big fan of high up collars, especially now that I've realised that this mohair is quite hairy. I think it might be quite annoying to have like a really high collar. But the thing that persuaded me to knit it was Lynette's email that she sent out about this pattern. And she did just say, like, you can just, if you want to just fold it down, you can quite easily, because you're just picking up and knitting the collar up. I absolutely love a folded neckline, so I think that's what I'm going to do. And it's kind of low stakes because you're just picking it up afterwards, so there's nothing really that can go wrong. If it goes wrong, I'll just undo it and start again. So that is my plan for the neckline. I think everything else I'm going to be just keeping to pattern. And yeah, I am so excited about this as well. There's quite a lot of brown things going on. I'm feeling very autumnal at the moment. So yeah, let's get on to another whip that I have not mentioned anywhere and I've just randomly decided to start knitting. Now this was a rare occasion where I bought the yarn before I knew what pattern. I hardly ever do this because I personally, even though clearly I have a lot of yarn behind me, it all has a project that I know I'm going to be using it for, and it all has a purpose, because I feel like I'm okay with having yarn in stash if I know what I'm going to be using it for. But personally, I don't like having lots of yarn that I don't have plans for, because how do you know if you have the right amount? And I like to knit sweaters mainly, so I need to have like a decent amount of each piece of yarn. But that's all of that is to say, I did buy this yarn without a pattern in mind, but I think it's allowed because this is the coolest yarn I've ever seen. It is Issachar Aran Tweed in Confetti. I have put it in a little cake from my birthday present yarn winder, which was very satisfying. So it comes in these little hanks, and then I've just put it into a cake form that I'm knitting with. And it is so interesting. It has all these different colours. It's kind of a grey base, and then it has just a million different types of colours all flecked throughout it. It's got reds, blues, greens, whites, just everything really, even like blacks and yellows and purples and everything. So I'm not usually one for loads and loads of colour. I like colour, but I like it usually in sort of muted shades and definitely not anything too in your face. So this was kind of perfect because from a distance it just looks like a grey sort of tweedy colour, and then only once you get up close do you notice all the different colours in there. So I saw that this was available on the Oxford yarn store, which I really need to go visit because I've ordered a lot of things from them online. I live closer to London, so I don't live too close to Oxford, but I really want to go there at some point because it has such good yarn. And I saw that they had it in stock, and I'd just seen a few, I'd been kind of stalking, you know, when you can stalk the Ravelry page of the yarn, and I just was obsessed with looking at everyone's projects that they had made with this yarn. I think Sari Nordland had made something with it. And then I had also seen the Lakes cardigan by Ozetta, which is knit in Noro Madara, which is a very similar vibe type yarn, but that was almost impossible to find anywhere. So I think I was trying to hunt that down to start off with, and then I couldn't find that anywhere. And then I came across the Issachar Aran Tweed in Confetti, and I was like, I'm just gonna have to pull the trigger. And so I bought a sweater quantity, and what I am knitting is the Port Jacket by Ozetta. And this is how far I've got so far. This knitted up very quickly. It is on 5mm needles. Now, I actually don't think this yarn is the correct weight for this pattern, but I kind of don't care. So I did a gauge swatch, and it was completely accurate on the stitch count. The row count was slightly off, but it wasn't too bad. And it has created quite a dense fabric, which when I blocked the swatch, it became a lot less dense and it was kind of okay. I would definitely say that I wouldn't want this as a sweater, but because the Port Jacket, because this is kind of a jacket to wear as outerwear, I kind of like the fact that it's a little bit denser than, you know, something like this, which is super, super drapey. I kind of like the fact that it's a little bit denser. So that's not bothering me too much. I think I probably will do, again, this is my new thing, I'm going to do a mid-project block because I want to just make sure that I'm going down the right track. So this Issachar Aran tweed is obviously Aran weight, and the port jacket calls for worsted weight. So technically it's the wrong weight, but as I said, when I did the swatch, it seemed okay. And I'm just gonna risk it. I mean, it's knitting up really quickly, so I'm probably just gonna spend a bit more time working on this, and then give it a block and just see how I'm feeling about the fabric. It's a bit of an experiment. It could all go wrong and I might have to just unravel it and try a different pattern. But for now, I'm very much enjoying this. I've just done the back panel. It's quite a simple stockinette pattern, but then it does have this little bit of ribbing down the side, which I like. And this is essentially a cardigan, but it's called a jacket, and it has kind of toggle buttons on it. I've been trying to track down the right buttons for this project. I think because it's got so many different colours in it, I'm a little bit confused as to what colour I want. I don't think I really want wooden toggles. I kind of like toggles. They slightly remind me of a jacket that I had when I was a kid. I had this like red coat that had toggles on it that remind me of a coat that Taylor Swift used to wear. I don't mind toggles, but I wouldn't say like I'm the biggest fan of them, but from looking through all the project photos, I think it does look best with toggles. I've seen a few with some buttons that I'm like, oh, I don't know if that quite works. I think because it's a jacket, I feel like the toggles make it feel a bit more like outerwear. So I think I'm going to try and track down potentially some grey toggles or maybe even some black toggles. I just want something that is not, I don't really want it to like pop out that noticeably. So yeah, if anyone has any ideas of what buttons you think I should do with this colour yarn, let me know, because I haven't decided yet and I just haven't come across the right thing. I'm not sure, but yes, I am very much enjoying. It's really nice to just, because obviously I'm doing colour work and lace for some other projects, so it's been really nice to just have a relatively big needle stockinette project that I can sort of whiz through. And I honestly did this in like, I think 2 days. So I've put it aside for now as I'm working on my other things. But I'll probably pick it up again at some point if the colour work or the lace gets a bit tiring. So yeah, I am loving this. Would definitely recommend this yarn if anyone is looking for something a little bit special, a little bit fun. I wouldn't say it's the softest yarn in the world. It's definitely feels quite rustic. Kind of reminds me of my Gilead yarn from Duraran Natura that I knit my Lakes sweater in. I happen to have here because I was wearing it earlier. As you can see, kind of similar vibes. Like from a distance, they almost look like the same yarn actually. So now I'm thinking, maybe I need to knit a Lakes pullover in this yarn as well. No, because then it would just be too similar to what I already have. But yeah, that is also why I wanted to knit a cardigan, not a sweater, because I already had that grey sweater, so I don't want to just knit another sweater in this yarn. Yeah, so that is that project. And then regular watchers will know that I'm knitting the Maggie cardigan by Petite Knit. I started this, don't even know how long ago now. I have made some small progress on it. I have started the sleeve, but overall it's not in a much more of a completed state than it was last time I checked in with you. I'm knitting this in Cardiff Cashmere Classic and I love this pattern. It's just taking me so long because it's on, I think it's, what is it, 3.5mm needles. So the contrast between how long this is taking versus the port jacket, which I've just been speeding through. They're both cardigans, but I feel like this one is going to be so much faster. But I'm going to get there. I'm taking my time with this one. Obviously, Cardiff Cashmere is so luxurious and lovely to work with, so I'm just taking my time. I just pick this up whenever I feel like it, and I took this one to Scotland with me. I was knitting this when I went to Edinburgh on a trip there recently, and look at these little stitch markers that I got. Look how cute. So this is almost becoming like my travel project because it is quite small and easy to sort of pack up with me. But I've got a lot of other projects that I'm taking to Sydney, so I don't know if I'm taking this one as well. Essentially, I have 4 whips going on right now. I have the Seashore skirt, the Rosie sweater, the port jacket, and the Maggie cardigan. And I am kind of embracing that. I think when I started knitting, I always said that 2 whips would be my maximum. But I'm kind of just going with the flow and not feeling guilty if I'm not picking up one of my whips, you know, within a week or something. But like, as long as it's not stressing me out or I'm not feeling guilty about having whips lying around, then it doesn't bother me. If I start to feel a bit guilty, then maybe I'll reconsider and cast on fewer things. But at the moment, I am just enjoying myself and enjoying the whip madness of September. So those are the 4 things I'm working on at the moment. I have 2 other chunky projects that I have bought yarn for, which is the Super Basic Tee by Oh What a Knit and the Upstream sweater by Rose Knitwear. So those 2 are kind of upcoming as well. I feel like all of that will probably take me into early next year, so I think I'm going to put myself on a bit of a yarn buying ban. I say that, I'm about to go to Sydney and I'll probably end up buying some Australian yarn, but that doesn't count because that's a holiday purchase, that's different. But aside from that, I am pretty much putting myself on a ban because I don't need any more. I've got lovely projects on the go and I feel like I don't need any more for a while, so I'm just going to stick with those. My yarn shelf is full, I don't need any more yarn. And then I guess the only other thing is kind of an acquisition, but it was just my birthday present, which was the Knit Pro yarn winder and Swift, which I am enjoying so much. All of my friends and family were laughing at me quite a lot about how excited I was about winding yarn on my birthday, and it's in this very nice wood colour and it's very aesthetic and I love how it looks, and I pretty much just kept it out on my desk and I just like looking at my little yarn winder and Swift every morning. It now kind of frees me up to buy things like this mohair, which I would never normally have been able to buy without a Swift. Like, there's no way I could have wound up a hank of mohair without the yarn winder, or it would have ended up in a very scary mess. So it kind of just has opened me up to be able to order some different yarns, like for example this one, which I couldn't have done without the Swift. So it's definitely not a necessary thing to buy, and I think I kind of held off for quite a while on ordering one because there are so many different types of yarn that you can buy just already in a ball. But I think as I get on my knitting journey, it is nice to have the option to be able to wind some stuff up, and I would definitely recommend this one. I mean, obviously I haven't used it over a long period of time because I only got it for my birthday recently, so maybe I'll give you another report on this Swift maybe after I've had it for like a year or something, and I can tell you how it's been wearing. So thank you so much for watching. I need to go and pack for my trip to Sydney. I may have slightly fewer videos over the next few weeks as I'll be in Sydney, but I am planning on visiting a few yarn stores. So as I've just said that I'm not buying any more yarn, I'll probably end up visiting some yarn stores. Oh, maybe I'll find some buttons for the port jacket, that would be fun. Anyway, all of that is to say I might have slightly fewer videos over the next few weeks, but I hope you will tune in when I return. Let me know what you're knitting in the comments, I always love to hear it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!